Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2007, I launched a campaign in the Middle East and North Africa to start a fight against death penalty in the Muslim world. I set up a number of national coalitions against the death penalty from Morocco to Yemen. And I was hoping to establish a coalition against death penalty in Iran. And my colleagues warned me that it would be a challenge to think about abolishing death penalty in Iran. And I took on that challenge. Unfortunately, when you look closely at the current constitution of Iran, you realize that it's impossible to establish death penalty in Iran under the mullah regimes. One would ask, why not? Death penalty has been abolished in other Muslim countries. Why not Iran? And I could tell you that if you look closely at the Iranian constitution, there is no democracy. There are no elections, free and fair elections in Iran. When I was launching the death penalty against the coalition against death penalty in the Middle East and North Africa, we counted 250 cases where death penalty could be applied in Iran. 250 cases. That means basically everything that the Wali al-Faqih wants to be punished by death penalty, the judges do so. The realities about the fundamentalist regime in Iran is that it has deprived the civil society, which aspires for human rights, democracy, and justice. It has deprived it of all mechanisms to reach those hopes and those targets. The cleric leadership remains a serious challenge to the Iranian population. It's a challenge that killed all hopes for establishing a democratic Iran. But the hope remains there through the struggle for democracy in Iran. There is plenty of hopes that remains. The movement championed by the NCRI and particularly by the PMI has managed to tease out the interconnectedness between politics, human rights, justice, and injustice by raising questions of human dignity, respect, and sustainable human rights, by recovering and uncovering the links in theory and practice between democracy, human rights, and social justice. The NCRI President-elect 10-point plan opens a gateway into those connections in a way that remains democracy by reviving the emancipatory perspectives, by committing to ballot box as the only criterion for legitimacy, freedom of association, expression, and freedom of the media, abolition of the death penalty, freedom of religion and secularization of the state, gender equality and equal participation of women in political leadership, the rule of law and justice as a foundation of the state, adherence to and respect of the international human rights conventions, the equality of all nationalities, recognition of private property, private investment, and the market economy, a foreign policy based on peaceful coexistence and compliance with the United Nations Charter, a non-nuclear Iran free of weapons of mass destruction. These are the hopes and aspirations of the Iranian people. But let me underline very briefly a reality that the United Nations should take very seriously. The United Nations Charter puts criterion for the membership of the organization itself. If we apply these criteria on the Iranian mullah regimes today, this government of Rouhani should be expelled from the United Nations. It should be expelled from the United Nations because it defies the fundamentals of the charters of the United Nations. And we should also expect from the United States of America and the European administrations to be warned against legitimizing the Rouhani regime or the current regime in Iran, legitimizing this regime at the cost of fundamental violations of human rights, death penalty, the rights of women being completely abolished, and torture used as a means of governance. A country that uses torture as means of governance, death penalty as means of governance, should not remain a member of the United Nations. And I thank you.